a little, Bruce. Let's warm them up. And how about Sirius getting Bruce giving Sirius a March 14th day for the subscribers? Anyway, let's move it along on a busy afternoon. And here is our pal, Mr. Shaughnessy, Boston Globe. We're going to do the Patriots for a little while. Eagles the next hour with Didinger. So we'll give you a little sense of both franchises. Dan, welcome. Nice to talk. How are you today? Okay, pal?
I'm good, Mad Dog. How you doing?
I'm okay, and I said it all last week, so I'll stick with it. They were just due to lose a game. Let's do the big picture first. You can't win all these games without maybe getting a bad break here or a bad call there. Maybe those 2 touchdowns. They play a lot of close Super Bowls. They were spotty against Jacksonville, somewhat fortunate in the fourth quarter to get home against the Jaguars in a championship game. We didn't think Foles had that game in him, but they do play close games. I'm not completely shocked they lost, and I think the Patriot fans got to accept the fact you can't win them all. Has that been the theme up in New England these last couple of days?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, this wasn't one of their better teams. I mean, they made it to the Super Bowl, and that's saying a lot, but they've been to 8 of them. And this was no wagon. I mean, they were disguising that defense quite a bit throughout the year. It was a house of cards. And it ended up being the defense that gave up 42 to the Chiefs the first week of the season. And that was waiting to come. And as you point out, Chris, you're not going to always get the reversal and the video review and the penalties and everything going in your favor, the lucky bounce. I mean, the old days, that last Hail Mary would have bounced off 6 Eagles and into the arms of Amendola, cruising across the back of the end zone. So that stuff didn't happen for them this time. It's sort of the law of averages. And I think the better team won.
Yeah, I listen, law of averages has a little something to do with it. I think there is something to be said for that. Are you somewhat surprised that even this porous defense allowed Nick Foles to look like, Bob Waterfield in this game here on Sunday afternoon?
Well, I mean, it came to forward in one game, but it was waiting to happen. And don't forget, they had the easiest path to the Super Bowl in history. The horrible AFC East where no one competes, new quarterback, new coach every year. So they get the automatic berth, and then they end up with this amazing good fortune where they face Marcus Mariota and Blake Bortles in the first 2 rounds. And, I mean, Jacksonville was better, but they lost their way. And the usual stuff happened with the Patriots, They spooked the other guys, and they wet their pants, and they got all nervous, and they stopped doing what they do, and the Patriots were able to beat them. And we thought that would happen against the Eagles, too, because that's the way it always works. But to their credit, Foles and Peterson stood up, played big boy football, didn't cower, and were able to win with a better team. But a lot of better teams have not been able to win against New England because of this, because they lose their minds.
Yeah, 100%. And they were fortunate against Pittsburgh to get the easy run through the AFC with Tennessee first instead of maybe playing Jacksonville first. How about, we'll talk about Butler in a sec, Dan. How about your feeling, the Fenway, the New England feel as far as the play, as far as the management is concerned? A couple of calls mentioned no timeout at the end of the first half. They had to call a timeout earlier in the second half on defense. Anything from a Bellichick strategies besides Butler? Anything on a strategy scenario with Bellichick that's being called to question here this week in New England?
Well, that timeout in the second half, I mean, he thought that was a critical point in the game, and that he wanted to, get a good look at what they were lining up in, then take the timeout, get his defense together, and think, this is like the most important play of the game. And he probably ended up being right, but they still weren't able to stop it. So I didn't see strategically a lot that calls for, wanting, again, disguising the defense was going to be a hard thing for them to do. I thought Peterson, he made the bold calls at the 4th downs, but Peterson knew that the Patriots couldn't get them off the field. I mean, this is a weird game, Chris. This game had 1 punt. Patriots had 600 yards of offense and no punts and didn't win the game. I mean, that's never happened before in the history of football.
Right. Did you have a problem with Bellichick on the last kickoff trying to get cute there that cost him 7 seconds and maybe 10, 15 yards of field position?
I was surprised by that. That's what the other team usually does against them. So, yes, I thought it was a little bit of a panic-stricken drive, and they were hoping for something to happen there. Maybe it got too full themselves, a little too much trickeration. But as you point out, it set them back, put them, they had to go 91 yards after that, so they weren't going anywhere.
They weren't. Now, obviously with Butler, I mean, I did not realize he wasn't there on the opening night thing last Monday. I did not realize that, he was sick. So, I mean, we were all surprised that you probably covering the team a lot closer than me on a day-in, day-out basis in Minnesota knew this. I did not. Are you stunned that he stuck to his guns, Bellichick, and did not even get him in there for a play or two or a series or two here on Sunday afternoon? What's your take on that?
Well, we're still all scratching our heads here, and this is the first time. 10 years ago, Bellichick had the controversial 4th and 2 against Indy regular season game, and it was strategic, and it was criticized, and it was pushed back by the fans. But other than that, and that's nothing compared to this. This is a Super Bowl. This looks like a non-strategic kind of a punishment thing, and the secrecy is all around it. We don't know what happened, but when they got gutted and gashed the way they did, and to have a player with his helmet on who, even at his worst, Butler's a good tackler. And some of the arm tackling and the bad emoji stuff we were seeing out there would have been better just to have him on the field. So we don't know what this is, but Patriot fans aren't having it. It's first time there's been serious pushback on Bellichick for that he cost them the Super Bowl.
Wow! So
no one knows how much difference Butler would have made, and they lost by 8 points, but they couldn't get a stop. And with Butler, I think you have a better chance. And not to mention he's this hero of, 3 years ago, the Super Bowl, kind of a charming story. And he's a free agent, and there's always a lot of retribution on that. But we don't know what the transgression was. But blatantly lying to the fans, usually they're fine with it, but this time they're not, because the explanation makes no sense. This was not a football decision, unless you want to go with a loose translation which would be, we have rules. If you break them, we're going to enforce that. But I just have to wonder. I mean, the week that Chandler Jones walked into a police station with shirtless and, just clearly on something, and he played that week. And I got to think Lawrence Taylor played a lot of weeks when Bill knew stuff was going on. This thing was, it looked petty, and it looked curious, and in the eyes of some here, it cost them the game, and they haven't been told why.
Well, I'm not sure if I go that far, but when you give up 41 points, I don't see why you can't put him in a certain spot. I will also say, though, that he's earned the right, Bellichick, to do what he wants. I mean, he's won 5 championships and one of the greats of all time, but I do understand a Patriot fan being somewhat, why not, perplexed. Did you know that I didn't even know he missed the team playing? Was this news early last week that he was sick? That this, this come out of nowhere on Sunday afternoon, or did you guys have a sense that all was not right in his world this previous week?
Well, we knew he got in a day later, and the illness was the reason that they used for that. So that was on the record, and but no one expected him to be standing there for the whole game, not playing one snap on defense, and he played every snap on defense in both playoff games prior to this, and 98% of the snaps on defense during the year. Didn't have a stellar year, but after Gilmore, he's the best they got back there, and kind of a fan favorite, and clearly wasn't hurt, and just the explanation that it's a football decision is just not flying here. And yeah, Bill has certainly earned the right to do whatever he wants to. I think if he came forward and said to the fans, "Hey, this guy was out of control, or he hit one of our assistant coaches, or something," people would have an easier time understanding it. But generally, Chris, when those kinds of things happen, they send him home. The guy's not there in uniform with a helmet on, taking up a space. He played a special teams play. What is this about? It just does. It's not consistent, and it's kind of infuriating to not be told and insulted by the head coach with these non-answers.
Yeah, fair. I mean, you could have used a roster spot for somebody else. I mean, I completely understand if he was that haywire about it during the course of the week. Now, I don't know enough about the relationship that Bellichick has with his assistants. Is Patricia confident enough in his own stock that he could have told Bill at the half, "Bill, listen, we're getting murdered in the game here defensively. Why don't we put the kid in the game and see what he can do?" Is Patricia, could he do that with Bellichick?
No, nobody has that gravitas here. And that leads to another thing. We can get to the whole thing later, but with how ownership feels about this, because if you're the owner of the team, this doesn't sit well, and there's already some tension up high on that, as we know. But no way a coordinator is going to tell Bill what to do on that. And Patricia was complicit in that, he stood up there after the game with a stooge-like response that this had to do with packages and just head-scratching, skull-imploding answers that make no sense. And really, a bad way to start your career as head coach of the Detroit Lions when you just have no spine and just stand up and say something that is patently untrue to cover up whatever this really was.
Now, Bellichick is one of these guys, though, who does cover up for his players. Could it be that he doesn't want to embarrass Butler and really say what the real reason is?
Just the opposite. Don't have him there. This was a complete shaming. This was sports shaming of the highest level. Make him stand there with his helmet on, crying during the national anthem. And no, just the opposite. If you didn't want to, you could just say Malcolm's not going to be here for personal reasons or whatever. Or
So you think they made it worse by making him sit there all day? To make a long story short,
absolutely, it's worse for everybody. It's worse for the fans. It's worse for Butler. It's worse for the owners. It's just. This is people are really angry about this back here.
Wow, fascinating. Dan Shaughnessy, Boston Globe, on the Butler scenario. Now, we'll get to the owners in a second. Is there any way? Now, I know no information. It's the Kremlin. No information gets leaked out. Are we ever going to find out? Well, I mean, Butler's going to tell somebody eventually, who then's going to tell us. I guess nobody on the coaching staff will say anything. Will we ever find out the real reason behind this? There had to be something. What was it possibly? Will we find out?
It's a good question. It kind of goes into the ether because, they're going to the off season and no one's available and all that. But, Butler's a free agent and, in a month or whenever teams start calling, they're going to be told something by Butler and his agent because they're going to want to know what's this about. And this kind of gives some support to the Bellichick side of this. If Butler hadn't done anything wrong, I would expect he and his agent would have come forward and just tried to knock down, the rumors of personal conduct or curfews or whatever, and just make that go away. We have not had that kind of thing. Everyone's just kind of clammed up. And
that's a very good point. That tells me, and not to interrupt you, Danny, but that tells me something must be up here, that this must be somewhat serious, because he is a free agent to be. He's got no obligation anymore to New England after the next 3 or 4 weeks. The rumors are circulating. If there was nothing to it, I don't know who his agent is, but you would think somebody would get it out there that, hey, hold on now. This is only about his playing style. He didn't do anything wrong all week. So that makes you think he did do something wrong, correct?
It does make you think that, but of course, Bellichick, when asked specifically, was this a disciplinary issue, he said no. So, but it just doesn't ring true. It's got to be. There's no way this was a football decision after 18 games and 98% of the snaps and every snap in the 2 prior games. You don't just all of a sudden, especially when you're getting gashed by Nick Foles on the other side. I mean, it makes no football sense.
None. That's why it's got to be something more to it. How about what Browner said about the weed? I'm sure you read that quote, the old teammate. What do you read about that?
Well, again, Ty Law has said folks deserve an explanation. Hightower retweeted or liked whatever the Browner sent out. This is the kind of thing that can split a locker room, and that's sort of the moving forward where this goes. And they've been harsh with other guys before, going back to Lawyer Malloy and 31-0 against Buffalo all those years ago. But they've basically been able to overcome that. But you do have a room of athletes, and I believe Butler was a popular guy there, and he's getting support from teammates and ex-teammates, and that could be. I mean, you're trying to win the Super Bowl, even if you're Tom Brady or Danny Amendola or anybody. You're saying, geez, we're trying to hold up our end here. Why isn't this guy in the field? I just don't know. Well, again, no one knows anything here.
Now, you mentioned ownership. We all know about the ESPN story. How truth it is, who knows? They've been there a long time, the 3 of them. Maybe there is a little, some bad feelings circulating. It wouldn't shock me. Kraft, usually he's got his fingerprints with everything. You don't tell me that Jonathan Kraft and Bob Kraft don't know what's going on. Fill me in on what they might be thinking right now. Let me hear.
Well, the Belichick Kraft thing has never been great. I mean, Parcells didn't like the Crafts very much, and Belichick kind of came into it with that, and it's worked magically here. I mean, they've been to 12 AFC championships, and this tremendous track record, 8 Super Bowls, all that stuff. But there's tension up high on this, and last week Jonathan Kraft said Tom Brady gets to retire on his own terms, which basically gives credence to the ESPN story that out of loyalty to Tom, they moved Jimmy Garoppolo, and to demonstrate their loyalty to Tom, they weren't going to keep both, and not have this threat sitting around waiting to succeed him. So that all looks true. But I think that, Belichick, he's a great coach, and Kraft's a great owner, but sometimes their interests are in conflict. And if I'm the owner, I'm like, what's going on here? We want to win the Super Bowl. Never mind whatever your standards are here, and where's the consistency? So who knows what's going on inside the walls? But there was already tension. This would not help that.
Did you do back-to-back stories on this in the last 2 days or not? Let me get a feel.
Yeah, Chris, we haven't put our heads up at all. I mean, it's been, I've been on the front page of the Globe 3 days in a row. That hasn't happened in a while. So, yeah, I mean, people just can't get enough of it back here.
Wow. All right. Now, let's do a couple other things. First, Brady. I understand you shouldn't ask the question, but I do get the idea because you're never going to hear from Brady now unless you want to watch his dopey little show. You're not going to hear from Brady until next training camp when he gives you 10 minutes. So I get the idea about are you going to come back in 2018? He played great. I don't see why he would quit at 40 after Garoppolo did leave. What's your take on the Brady press conference on Sunday afternoon, Sunday night? Let me hear.
Sure. I mean, he did play great, and that was 500 yards of passing and right down to the last Hail Mary that still had a chance. So that's a great day for him. I mean, he really carried him in this game. He was really the only good thing they had going for him. And he lost Cooks early in the game. Gronk was mostly a decoy in the first half. So they were trying, they were really going against the tide here in this and trying to make up for the defense. But pretty good day when you don't punt once and you get, 500 yards of throwing and 600 yards of offense. So he carried him. He'll be back next year. He's living advertising for the TB12 method, which is what he wants to be. And they should be a wagon offensively next year. I mean, they'll have, Edelman's back. They got all the other guys. They're loaded on that side of the ball next year.
They do lose their coordinator, but you're right about that. All right, how about Gronkowski? I saw that press conference. I think he kind of got himself in a little trouble. I don't think he meant to give him an idea that he's going to retire. I would be surprised if he would. Now, I know he's had a lot of concussions, so that does put a little different feel on it. And I know he probably doesn't love training camp and likes to have a good time. I get all that. But I would think Gronkowski would come back, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I do too. That was more a suggestion than Gronk saying something. The question was asked. He had chances to shoot it down, but he didn't initiate it, and but he also didn't kill the question, which is, are you going to retire? So, but no one here seriously thinks that we've seen the last of him. I think it might be a couple of years off. I think what he does and what his body's been through, it's not forever. But yeah, in my view, he's back.
Butler just put a statement out. Did you know this? I want me to read it?
No, I'm talking to you. No.
I'll get someone to read it for us if it's not that long, and we'll do that in a minute when we get it set up so we have an idea what's going on. How about Bellichick? He said he's going to come back too. I know he loves it. He's 66 years of age. He's got Brady. Why would he quit? You won't hear from him for a while unless you want to go on a boat with Jimmy Johnson in the Florida Keys. And I'm sure you'll try to get on that boat, but I'm not sure if you'll be allowed, Dan, to be quite honest with you.
Old man overboard.
Overboard. What's your take? No, he's taking a big hit here. I love the Bill and Bill thing. We got a different feel of Belichick. He came across great there. He wasn't as cranky after the game as I've seen him. He wasn't as grouchy. I didn't think. What's your take outside of Butler? Let me get your whole read on this Belichick thing. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, he's the greatest coach I've seen, and makes a bigger difference on a game-to-game basis than anybody I've seen in any sport. Because, football, the coach matters more. And in NFL in 2018, the Bellichick difference, we see it week after week. It's worth, 5, 6, 10 points a game. I mean, it just is going in. And they didn't get that from him on Sunday. That was an aberration. But week in, week out, they do. The disparity's never been greater. So, I think, now there's this. I'm looking at this statement now. It says, during Super Bowl last week, I never attended any concert, missed curfew, or participated in any of the ridiculous activities being reported. They are not only false, but hurtful to me and my family. Okay, so you got Malcom Butler on record saying that, the Patriot cartel will try and get this word out there to make Bill look better, that the player was misbehaving. So this is more, if Butler's telling the truth here, and it would certainly not serve him to lie about something that could be disproven, then this is, it's some sort of a football decision, which is a head scratcher of the highest order, given everything that went on, a bad week of practice does that? I don't know. I don't think so.
Wow, he did what you wanted him to do, come out and tell us that he didn't do anything wrong. And Bellichick, no, he'll survive this, right, Dan? Belichick, I mean, I know this looks bad, but I mean, this is Bill Belichick. You can scream all you want, but you want him coaching your football team. Maybe it's smart, maybe it's a little blemish for a little while, but in the end, nobody's going to want Belichick out of town, correct?
Oh, no. He's a reservoir of support here is deep and will continue to be so, and he has earned that. I mean, this might go down as his Grady Little moment, which is unexplained, but all that said, there's no disputing his greatness and what he has given the region.
He has. Did you see the Bill and Bill thing, Danny?
I did. I loved it.
I thought, Parcells maybe not so much, but I thought Belichick came across so well in that. He was humble. He was deferential. He was actually amusing with the 4 Super Bowls. We gave him 2, meaning the Patriots and losing to the Giants. He reveres, he admires Bill. We all know that. I thought he came across, and I would think you did, and everybody in New England did too. You can't come across better than Belichick did here on Thursday night. Do you agree?
I think you're right. I think it was a little bit of softening of his image with that. And, him a little bit. We've seen this. I mean, I know that's there. I know there's a difference between what he shows everybody and what he feels the need is at the podium versus, the real guy who has great intellectual curiosity and really a smart guy. And I've always said, if there's like a few people you'd like to drive to Florida with, and I would love that just to get him going, just to talk. And I think he's anecdotal. I think he's funny and very smart. And he's got the history. We're the same age. So I can relate to all those things, but I understand what he's doing with his, public persona. I get that. I don't mess with it, and I don't really. There are times he gets called on it. This is one of those times, but by and large, it's worked magically for him here, and why not keep it going?
You've always told me that when you need them, you can get them. Meaning, when you need a quote, an explanation, you can call the Patriots PR staff and, get through the Kremlin and get them on the phone for a little bit. Can you do that in the next couple of weeks here, or are you going to have to wait until minicamp? Let me hear your thoughts on that.
I think everything's buttoned down now. I mean, these guys would have been the best POWs in the history of warfare. They're good. And I don't think there's any cracking of the walls at this point. Things are too hot right now. And what I told you in the past, that was true. I'm not sure if I'm considered a friend of the state anymore. The Flakegate thing really wasn't our friend, and I think it's harder now. But deep down, when it's all over and we're really old men, we'll laugh about this and be able to talk about it. I hope. I know I will.
Good job, Dan. Thanks for the help here today. I appreciate it very much.
Take care, Chris.
Hi, Mr. Shaughnessy. I'm Malcom Butler, and he basically put the rest of the idea that he missed curfew and did this and did that, which is interesting. We'll see what Bellichick has to say, and Dan did a good job. They're up in arms there in New England. And let me get to since I got a couple minutes here before we get to break in, Steve, and your calls. The 30 for 30, which I did not see until Sunday afternoon on Bellichick and the Parcells, was... Again, you can call every one of those things they do superb. So you throw away that word too much, but it was very, very good. And the thing that I got out of it the most, just watching it, I was in a peaceful scenario too. I wasn't bothered. I didn't have to put it on pause and come back 15 minutes later. Right on, a straight hour and 20 minutes. Actually, I moved through the commercials, which actually helps because then you don't lose your train of thought. I was really, really impressed with the way Bellichick came across. I was going to bring this up yesterday, but I wanted to leave it alone with the game. I figured we needed to do the game. I was going to save it for today, but since Dan mentioned it, I was really, really shocked. Shocked is wrong, but I was really, really, really impressed with him. I thought he was, he obviously, he came down to the Meadowlands. They did this show at the Meadowlands. Bellichick, I think there's only a couple of coaches from a perspective, and I love Saban. I'm just talking about the old guard. Jimmy Johnson, he loves. You can sense that. Johnson almost made him the defensive coordinator in Miami when he left the Browns in the 90s. But you can sense that he feels indebted to Bill because Bill, brought him in there 2 or 3 different times. The New England, when he got fired from Cleveland, made him his defensive coordinator. Explained to him, if you want to go to Minnesota when I'm in hot water with the Giants in '83, feel free. I mean, there's a closeness with him, and there's a respect there. And, I think Bellichick was always loyal to Parcells. And I just came out of that. The Jet thing was handled poorly by everybody involved, especially by Bellichick. He got cold feet with the Jets for whatever the reason. Kraft fell in love with him again, so he wanted to go back. Maybe he didn't want to follow Bill when Bill left there. Who knows? The owner, Leon Hess, was on his deathbed. He was worried about Jim Dolan or Woody Johnson. He did take money from Hess to stay put, and he took it and left. So that's not good. But I've always said that. But overall, I mean, that period of his life is not great, and obviously he's in a scenario where he can be tough to handle. And there was a sequence there when Bill was with Dallas and he was with New England, and the Patriots hosted the Cowboys, and they didn't get along, didn't talk. And Belichick owned that. Said, that's probably my fault. I could have handled it a little differently. I was really, really, really impressed with him. I was floored how much I was impressed with him. And I was also thinking about this. You think about Belichick. And this is what Dan said about how much better he is than all these other coaches. This is a guy that, coached Lawrence Taylor. Right? He's the best defensive player in the history of the NFL. That includes Butkus. Coached Lawrence Taylor. Convinced Lawrence Taylor how to play the game. Well, he knew how to play the game, but developed Lawrence Taylor and, put him into situations and gained Taylor's respect. That is 30-something, 35, 40 years ago now. It's the early 80s. Now, anybody else in the NFL do that? Any other coach who's got that kind of track record? Early 80s football giants with LT? Go ahead, tell me. Devising schemes? Tell me. Anybody? Not a person. Not a person. It's funny. When he was the defensive coordinator of the Giants, or in the mid-'80s, I used to run in his race over in New Jersey. It was I forget the name of it. It was a long race, like 5 miles, and it was probably in, I would say, late spring. I used to go over there and do it from the city. I used to run over there. I probably did it 4 or 5 years in a row. And Belichick used to go. And this is in the late 80s, before anybody knew who Belichick is, long before the Browns. And we used to talk. He's a sports fan. He used to talk. You could tell he's a big sports fan. He went to the Timberwolves game last week and everything else. And I never really took advantage of it. And now, you got never a chance to get to him again. But I rue the day that for whatever the reason, I did not take advantage of that relationship and learn something about football. Now, I will say this, and this I know for a fact, because I was told. Whether Belichick knew or not about Bill leaving in 1990, remember the Giants, or 91, the Giants win the Super Bowl, and Bill leaves in May after they beat Buffalo. Leaves in May. 3 months later, claiming not healthy heart. Okay? Belichick went to the Browns right after the season, got hired by the Browns. Now, a lot of people think that is a job that, it's too bad the Giants, the timing was poor and everything else, because he could have been a Giant coach. 2 things on that. Bill recommended to George Young that he thought Ray Hanley would be a great coach. And that was his recommendation of the guy to replace Bill coaching the Giants. And the Giants then hired Ray Hanley. And number two that's important. Remember, George Young, who should be in the Hall of Fame, had in his contract that he would pick the Giant coach, not the owner. When he came up from Miami in 79, Roselle did the deal, because the Maras hated each other. Tim Mara, Wellington Mara's nephew and uncle. They were dysfunctional. Roselle brings Young in, and George in his contract had it that he could pick the coach. I can tell you on the man's grave, he never, this is George, in a million years would have hired Belichick to be his coach. Never. He knew he was a great coach. Never liked him. And never under any circumstances, would have hired Bellichick. You have that definitively. Must have told me that 100 times. And he had it in his contract. So even if Bellichick was aware of Bill going to retire, he never was going to get the Giant head coaching job in a million years, as long as George was the general manager. Now remember, George and Parcells were up and down. And the year that if you watch the show, Parcells is in there talking about the 83 season when he played Bruner and they went 3-12-1. And Bill says, I'm not sure if I'm going to be back. I might get fired myself. So, Bill, if you want to go coach the Vikings as a defensive coordinator, you better take the job. Who knows on me? Everybody has always maintained that George was going to fire Bill. No. Tim Mara was going to fire Bill, co-owner, Wellington's nephew. George wanted Bill to stay. Tim Mara said, George, I want him out of here. And George told Bill to write out a 30-page deal of how you're going to improve the Giants and go sell it to Tim Mara, because that's the only way he can stay. In the meantime, George put a list together, and that list included Schnellenberger to be the new Giant coach. But Bill went down to the Jersey Shore and convinced Tim to give him another chance, and the rest is history. But I can tell you right out of the gate that there is not a chance in hell, and George is probably wrong, not a chance in hell, under any circumstances, he was ever hiring Belichick to coach the Giants. Mark it down. Never. Now, that's a mistake, as it turns out, and he ended to go to Cleveland. And Belichick knew that. And that's why even if Belichick knew that Bill was going to retire after that second Super Bowl, and whispers have been circulating about Bill leaving even after they won the first Super Bowl when he left Hugh Culverhouse at the altar, that famous story going to Tampa, owning the Bucs. Belichick, they didn't talk about this in the documentary because I'm sure it was off limits. I'm telling you I'm telling you this is true. Belichick probably knew that Bill was going to retire. I mean, he don't think he tells his defensive coordinator that, you know what, I'd stick around here. I might leave, so you might get the job. Told him that he probably knew, but Belichick knew he better get out of Dodge because George wasn't going to hire him. That's a fact. Update. That was a good show, was it not?
I really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's great. And Belichick, I can't.
I didn't realize that George did not like Belichick. I didn't know all those details.
Hated him.
Is that sort of like a known fact, or?
I think it's John Mara would know that.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody. This is now 30 years ago.
Right.
Mike would know. Mike Francesa would know that. Peter King probably would know that.
Right. But it's not something like something that I missed, like that is common knowledge.
This is not common knowledge.
Right.
You know how many times George took me? George came to my birthday parties. You know how many times George Young?
I know you guys were close.
You know how many times George Young told me that? Chris, I am not hiring Bill Belichick. If he fell on me, I'm not hiring Bill Belichick. And I know he's a great coach. He's not getting his job. That's a fact.
Did he divulge why he?
Well, I know why. I'm not going to tell you why.
Okay.
I can't.
Can't blame me for asking.
No, I can't. I'm not.
Understood.
I mean, I don't know why specifically, but I have my theories.
Okay.
And it turned out to be a mistake. And they brought in Hanley. And Bill knew that George was never hiring Belichick either. And they brought in Hanley, and Hanley was recommended by Bill. Bill and George both thought Hanley would be a great coach. As it turns out, Hanley was now he was put in a tough spot. He was put in a spot with two quarterbacks, Hostetler and Sims. So he's dealt with a quarterback controversy in his first summer. Bill's out. He leaves in May. 3 months after the season's over. Bill didn't leave the day after. He waited 3 months.
Yeah, that's a problem.
He handled it horrendously. He leaves. Then you got Hanley coming in, and Hanley starts his career in June, and what's he got laying in his table? The quarterback who won the Super Bowl in '86 and the quarterback who just beat Buffalo 3 months ago. That's a tough spot.
And a locker room that was pissed off that Parcells left and that they didn't hire Belichick.
I'm not sure. I'm sure there was some.
I mean, you saw it. LT reference that in the documentary.
Right. And then obviously Hanley got 2 years, did a terrible job, and then he brought Reeves in, and Reeves that first year was a very good year.
Yeah.
Now George didn't love Reeves either, but he knew Reeves was a good coach.
Right. So he put up with it.
Wasn't a big. George was hot stuff with these coaches. Anyway. Are you ready to go?
Yes, of course.
Shaughnessy did a good job.
Very good.
Very good.
He's always good.
Here's the Sports Pie with Stevie on Mad Dog on Leave.
Mad Dog Sports Radio.